Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Officially my favorite day of the week. Yes, it's usually, it's a hump day anymore. It's shred day.
Shred.
Yes. So for everyone that is starting to roll on in, I have a very special guest who I've actually had the pleasure of meeting in person. A lot of times I don't.
Imagine that, right?
Right?
In real life.
So welcome, Tobi Moyle. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So just a little bit of, background. Tobi and I met through NAMBA. And I want to say we've attended 2 conferences together, I think.
At least,
right?
yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So I feel like, we've gotten to know each other. And Tobi, I'll let you give you a little bit of a background because you are in the industry, but you have a specialty, if you will.
Yes. Well, so I have to say something and tell on us a little bit. So I'll tell on me a little bit.
Ooh.
So you took a picture of us at one of
Yes.
the conferences that you mentioned. And you do such a beautiful job with photography, and you had like a filter on there or something. It was just like the coolest picture. So I actually cropped myself out and I use it as my headshot.
I love that. Do you know how many people have
you
used
edited? So
it's funny how many people have used pictures that I've taken of them as their headshots. I mean, that's why I'm good at my job of social media and branding. You got to have an eye for those things, right? So I feel very honored. So thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. But yes, so my background is in the mortgage industry for my entire career. Straight out of college, went to work for the big banks, and then did that and climbed the corporate ladder for the better part of a little over 2 decades. And then a few years ago, I left my corporate role to start my own business consulting firm, become a business coach. And so that's what I do now.
Yes, and when I did the post, I said this was a hot topic, and I feel like it is a hot topic and very relevant because we're in a world today where obviously, we want to be accepting of everyone, right? But for whatever reason, we're still in this kind of like, the male, the female, the gender roles, just kind of how things are shifting, where sometimes it's a little bit kind of taboo to even talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. So the fact that we're going to discuss a topic that is very relevant, but also I think a lot of people tend to stay away from because, like you said, it's perspectives.
That's right.
And you work with women in the C-suite space, and there's a lot of us women that are trying to essentially, and I don't want to say climb the corporate ladder because I feel like it's kind of like it's a passé phrase, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to move forward in their careers, get it, upper levels in management and in companies. And what happens is, like you said, a lot of times we tend to self-sabotage that path, that journey in certain ways. And so
I know, I can tell you're like, let me not.
Yeah, so I'll let you, because I am not the eloquent one. You are the business coach. You are a keynote speaker. You're MC for NAMBA. So I will let you.
It's like a hot potato. I should have brought a prop and we could throw it this way, throw it over. Yeah. Yeah, you're a very eloquent speaker, my dear. Hence why you're hosting these shows. So you do a fantastic job. Thank you though for the compliment. But yes, so we're all human beings, and human beings compare and contrast, and they notice differences quite literally. We're visual creatures, we're auditory creatures. I mean, we notice things that look different, sound different, act different. And that's not a bad thing, to recognize that we're all unique. Certainly we all have, some of us have more differences than others. It could be gender, could be race, could be background, could be ethnicity, could be religion, whatever it is. I think to not talk about some things is also does a disservice to the conversation, right? Because you can't, I mean, we should be able to talk about things. I think, this is putting on my little Tobi philosopher hat, I think this show is fantastic, and all the conversations that you host and that you have are so valuable, because I think that there needs to be more communication rather than less, and people need to say things and speak their mind and how they feel, right? Because when you say, this is how I feel, or this is how it feels to me, even more accurately. So you shouldn't blame someone for saying that. And if they misstep or say something, or something that someone says offends you, then you're allowed to say, well, this is how it makes me feel when you say that. And when you said that, this is how it felt to me. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. It doesn't mean that has to be a big fight about it. Unfortunately, we live in a very divisive world, and people do like to make bigger things out of things. But I think you can't get to the point that we want to get to, which is at least understanding everyone's point of view, without having some of these conversations. So the whole self-sabotage, women, we're not saying that women need to fit in and act a certain way. However, if you are the minority, i.e., you're a female in a male-dominated room, let's just be a very specific example. If you are one of two women in a room with 15 other men, you are the minority, literally, right? There's less females than there are males. And I've been that female in my entire career. I know you have as well, just by nature of the business that we're in, and finance and banking. And, things are certainly changing, which is fantastic. There's more of us females representing and out there. But do you want to, I don't know, do you want to just pretend like it doesn't matter, that how you act, that's who my great grandma used to say, I tell it like it is. And that's fine, right? But you don't want to do that, at least I didn't, at the risk of isolating myself or making other people not want to listen to me because they don't connect. You got to connect with people to get them to see your point of view. You got to get on their side of the table in order for you to make an impression on them. And so, probably not putting that as eloquently as I could, but yeah. So I wrote a list. So true story. So I had a little list. Yesterday evening, I was writing down like little 5 things, and I could make a laundry list of a lot of things. I think that women, I guess my thing is I would just want to bring awareness to it. It's one thing if you're doing things and you're like, I do it on purpose like this. That's how I want to do it. That's cool. Right. It's your right. We live in America, and it's a free country, and we have the right to do things. What I don't like, or what I don't think is a good thing, is when someone's doing something and they don't realize, that comes into that self-sabotage. You don't even necessarily realize that what you're doing or what you're saying or how you're acting is hurting you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If it's giving the wrong impression. So I would think I was sharing with you, I had a friend whose younger child she likes to wear like really, like purple mohawk hair and what have you, which is cool, right? I love purple mohawk hair. Matter of fact, I think it's very cool. Yeah. But she wanted a corporate job. And so I was helping her. I was kind of mentoring her a little bit. And I'm like, so right away, the purple mohawk, at least in most corporations, maybe not at Google, maybe, right? Maybe not everywhere. But from my perspective, the 2 big Fortune 50 banks that I worked for they wouldn't be able to even appreciate how smart you are and how much value you bring, because all they're going to see is that purple mohawk. And I'm not saying they wouldn't hire you because of it. Does that make sense? It's hard for them to even get to the core of who you are, because that's speaking so loudly. And so does that mean she has to change her hair? Not necessarily, but at least be aware to say, well, they shouldn't judge me because of my purple mohawk. You're right. They shouldn't judge you because of it, but it's just unusual, and people don't connect with things. That's a little tagline, right? People don't connect with things that are very different than what they are, if that makes sense. And so you make it hard on yourself. That's another way to put it. We have enough things that make it tough on yourself, especially as females. I think we just want to try to make it a little easier on yourself. But I'm also, and I know you are too, Raquel, I'm all for individuality. So I don't want someone to hear this and, you got to kind of hear the whole conversation that we're going to have here over the next few minutes, because I certainly don't want someone to walk away, and think, Tobi doesn't think you should have crazy cool hair colors or something. I believe me. Yeah, I like it. I think it's very cool. It's just there's a time and a place for everything. You know?
Well, and I think also what happens, and especially I think right now with a lot of different companies, what happens is then maybe she'll find a company that can appreciate that and has that environment and has already evolved.
Thank you.
Get to that level where they're not seeing the purple mohawk, where, let's be honest, in the mortgage industry, it's a little bit more antiquated. It doesn't mean that it's not going to get there, but it's a little, kind of slower in pace. So someone like herself, maybe not right now at some of these companies, but maybe in future can. So I feel like it also just helps that individual be at a place that is a right fit for them as well.
Great point. Yeah. Cause you're right. We can go through life and you can be who you want to be. So funny story. So I made a little list, and I thought kind of like if I could consolidate and kind of lump things together and just, and hopefully the conversation that we're having is give someone a little insight maybe into, maybe I'm doing some of this, or maybe I've never thought of that, or, hopefully there's a little value that someone would take away.
Yeah. Let's learn.
Okay. Well, or like I said, I don't know about all that, but I mean, it's just, this is what I've seen in being a leader, female leader myself, and then having led thousands of other females in a kind of a corporate America spot. But the funny thing is, so I was making this list, and this morning I was speaking with one of my business mentors, happens to be a male. And so I asked him early this morning, I said, hey, I want to run through this list with you of 5 things. And I just want you, I'm not going to bring up your name on this conversation, but I said, I just want you to tell me if you think I'm on track. He's a male from his perspective, right? I'm asking, what do you think? And I said, so I have this list, and it's, things that women can sometimes, I feel, do to self-sabotage themselves in their careers, in their jobs. And anyways, and we start talking, and he's like, didn't you say there was a list? I'm like, yes. So hang on just a second. I'm like, so I wanted to ask you though, there's an event coming up, and I'm like, okay, back to the list. And he goes, so number 1 thing, women bounce around too much.
Oh my God. Like, my ex-husband's like, Raquel, I don't need the background story. Like, just get to the point.
I couldn't even get to the point where I was asking him about the list. He's like, I hope that's number 1 on your list. I'm like, actually, it was kind of on there, but you're right. Women can bounce around too much. And it's just how our brains think. If I didn't bounce around so much, I would have looked up the statistic, because I shared it before. I don't know what it is currently, but literally us females say about twice as many words in a day than a male counterpart does. We're verbose. We like to describe things. We can, the flip side of this is that some people would argue that there's no such thing as multitasking, but women can do a lot of things and juggle a lot of things. It's just how our brains work. So to a male counterpart, it might feel like we're bouncing around a lot, because we kind of are, and we can. Whereas males, this is not my opinion. This is some science here. This has been studied time and again. They just, men think more linearly. They're more goal focused. They, right, cause and effect. They're on topic at a board meeting. They're going to talk about that one thing before they go to the next thing. Like you said, me, you, we're going to go here, 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 here. Not always, I'm generalizing, but a lot of times we're going to bring up like 20 things. Our mind still remembers the first thing, but we're just over here, and it can drive men who's on the call, that's males. It can drive them nuts. And we just have to be aware, because it's almost like speaking 2 different languages. We're over here like doing our thing, and the guy's like, please just.
I know. And then what happens is they tune us out. And I mean, that's a real thing too. And that just happened to me a couple times last week with a couple of colleagues of mine, male colleagues. And I was like talking in there, wait. And they had to say, I apologize. What is it again? And I remember one of it was, we were trying to get an Uber, and I was like, guys, why don't we go and try to get a Lyft? I'm like, I have the Lyft app. Guess what? They weren't listening to me. And like an hour later, I was like, we could have done Lyft. And they're like, if we had just listened to you in the first place. But they acknowledged that they tuned me out, and then we kind of laughed about it, right? Because it really is like, the dynamic of things, I was like, yeah, if you'd listened to me in the first place, maybe when we wouldn't be sitting here, you waiting for, a car.
Yeah. I mean, that's a real life example. It's a perfect
That was a real life
example.
example where, and
Perfect.
they agreed. They like, listen, we're sorry. We like literally just tuned you out. And I didn't take it personally, like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. It was, I just knew that they were focused on getting a car. So by me over here, like it just was difficult for them to be able to do both.
Well, what a good for you that you like recognize that. Literally, I keep looking down at my list and the clock because I can bounce around.
Yeah.
So number two thing for me is, number one, women, we can bounce around too much. And you know what? It's funny if it's an Uber or something about where you're going to go into lunch or something, it doesn't matter. But if you're in a boardroom or you're in that C-suite type of level meeting and decisions need to be made, right? You're talking about, you got 8 employees and you're going to have have 2 less because of budget reasons or what have you. You got to make sure that you're not getting lost or tuned out. I mean, literally, it's a thing. So you just got to be careful, write down your points. Right? That's why I do these things, because I can go all over. I got to keep myself honest, keep myself on track. So that's a little takeaway for if you're a woman like me that does that. I'm not saying everyone does, but number 2 is don't take things so personal. Generally, and these are all generalizations. You might be a woman watching this and like, I don't take things personal. Tobi's wrong. I hear you. But I'm just saying generally, if I look at the population of 500 women that I've worked with, sometimes myself included, I've been known to take things too personal when it's the situation. Use a real life example. You're leading a project at your company. And someone says, your male manager says, this project didn't turn out like we wanted it to. A woman sometimes can internalize that and and feel like I didn't do a good job. He didn't like, the way I did it. No, not necessarily. It could just be like he didn't like the outcome of the project.
Yeah.
Women can, the good flip side is that we care so much. Not to imply men don't care, but women really care. They really wrap themselves up in something. And there's a study I read years ago. I'll mess it up so I can't cite it, but it was something to the effect of when women were terminated, they felt like they were terminated, like their
being. Yes.
It wasn't a position was being eliminated or they just didn't fit that position well. It was like an indictment on who they were as a human being. And it's bad. I mean, it's sad because that can really be I speak for myself. I mean, I've been in those kind of situations where something didn't work out and I took it so personally. Like I felt like a failure myself. And that's not who you are. You are not your role, right? That's one little facet of who you are, your business role, your profession. It's one little facet.
That's why essentially the premise of this show was to show all the many facets of women, especially in this industry. And so I love that you said that, because that really is what this is about, and so keep going with the list, because this is like super fascinating. Like I'm taking a lot of this.
Okay. And you could, it's like a subset of that. So there's some wonderful books, that, I mean, I don't know these authors, but they're great. Lois Frankel wrote a book. It says, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. This was like a revised version. That's why it says still.
Still.
Still. And she's got there's like something like 200 mistakes. I don't like the word mistakes because I think that implies like you're doing it wrong or something. Just 200 points. Things that you can point out. This is not about male or females, but Marshall Goldsmith's book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It's just a good professional development book anyways. And then Play Like a Man, Win Like a Woman is another great one. But there's all sorts of stuff, good stuff. But the reason I brought that book up then is because a subset of not taking things too personally is in that book, they talk a lot about a big mistake that they think, that author thinks, is pretending that it's not a game. Whereas men kind of get it corporately, career-wise, that there's like some gameship going on, right? And that there's like winners and losers, and there's like, it's like they kind of gamify it a little bit. Okay. And women there again can kind of weave their jobs into the fiber of their literal human self, whereas men can separate themselves from it a little bit and play it like a game, like their characters in a game. Anyway, so they go into a whole chapter that's better than what I just described. But I think that is true. I'd agree with that. Men kind of can go home and turn it off.
Yes.
Always, but a lot of them can. Whereas a woman will like stew on it, like, lay in bed at 2 a.m, like, I didn't get the project done. And a lot of men are like, I'll work on it when I can work on it tomorrow,
Yeah. And I know, and knowing that, like, now I also realize if I'm thinking that way, I always have to remind myself that the other person, because usually it's other people involved, and when you feel that way, I'm like, they probably have no clue. They're like not even thinking about this. They have moved on. Like, why am I sitting here feeding this energy that is not necessary? So that sometimes helps me when I realize, like, those people, they're like long gone somewhere else in their space. So then I think for me, it's a good reminder of like, Raquel, you're over analyzing, overthinking, kind of over emotionalizing it. Like, just move on. Like everybody else is probably moving on too.
Yeah. We all absorb things in our own time though. So, there's that, but something that helps me, and that, so yeah, you're spot on. We're right on the same track. Whenever I get really stressed out about something, which is like on the daily, and I'll say something like, I remember 10 years ago when there was a file that I couldn't get to closing, and I stayed up all night and I was so upset about it. And I'm like, and look, 10 years later, it doesn't even matter. I don't even remember that file name anymore. But at the time, there was a time, one time, this was obviously when I was still producing manager in the mortgage business. I literally, I don't know if any of you can relate, men or women, I literally thought about quitting my job because I failed a client, is the way I felt it. Now, mind you, the underwriter at the last minute came up with a new condition, and that happens, right? But it was like the 9th hour, and I was so upset that I thought the only way I could even try to make this right is to say, I quit. I was going to quit my job. Mind you, it would help the customer zilch, right?
Yeah.
The file still wouldn't get closed or anything. But I just felt there again, like I had failed them at a guttural, primal level, like I am a failure. And I was going to quit my job. Years later, couldn't even tell you the file name. Things worked out, right? They got the loan. They needed an extension. Like, it worked out. And the mortgage business, especially for those of you watching that are in the business, hey, it's a stressful business. I used to say it's not life and death, but it feels like it. I mean, it's a pretty serious. It's a pretty, it's pretty serious, right? I mean, it's a lot of stress. Okay, number 3. I just did exactly what number 3 is. So I did that on purpose. It was a nice segue.
It was like, wow, that was pretty like.
Not really. Number 3 is women sometimes can overshare. Women.
I am so guilty of that. Like, right here. I, Raquel Borras, am an oversharer.
Well, see, I love you for it because I'm a woman. So I'm like, I love listening to Raquel. I feel you. I do. And but sometimes, and one of the books, I don't remember which one it was. It was maybe not one of these, but I remember a long time ago about this topic. They're like, when it comes to sharing really personal things in the workplace, a little bit goes a long way. It's like salt. You don't need too much. Just a little bit, just a little skosh. You don't need to give the whole 20-year background. You can. There again, it kind of goes back to what we were saying a few minutes ago. You can, but just people can't unhear something. So if you share with them, you know what I mean? I don't know. So it's just, you got to know what be aware. And I've certainly overshared. I still do overshare. And that goes with talking too much. There's a whole segment of like just the whole way we communicate. But on that note, I will say I was at a women's event a few days ago, in person, like a couple hundred women together. And it was so cool because when you get a group of women, like a sisterhood, of women supporting other women. And I think that is a superpower. So I don't want to just focus on like things that I think can kind of maybe get us off course and self-sabotage, but really we have the flip side to every one of these things is that it can also be used as our superpower, our strength, that women do share. They are real and honest and authentic. And that's what, connects women so closely, I think. So
let me ask you a question because it just it came up. So, obviously we're discussing these things. So how much of a responsibility do men in the workplace, in the corporate world, how much of a responsibility do they have to educate themselves on how we function? You know what I mean? Because it's the same thing. Like we are kind of taught and made to believe that we have to understand how men work and how they, are in the business world. So I feel like, isn't there also a part of that they all should kind of understand us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I agree. I think no question. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up because you're so right. It's not like we have to conform to fit their world.
Right.
Going back to if you're the 1 out of 20 or you're the, one person in the room, it's just a matter of in order to even get to that place where you can have some dialogue. Sometimes you have to get in to fit in or get along to get along, whatever, you kind of have to get there. But I think you're right. And I think the sharp men, get it. They do get it. And they do have conversations, and there should be a safe space for a conversation to be had. And that goes back with any differences. I think there needs to be real conversations, one-on-one, just two people, not sensationalize it and just say, hey, this is how I feel when you do this. Tell me what you think about how I'm communicating. What can I do to better as the man, what can I do to better communicate with you? I want to make sure, because chances are too, and you tell me if you agree or disagree, but I think whenever there's any kind of either tension or like you can tell you're not landing with someone right, like you can kind of feel that it's like, you can just see them like kind of like rolling their eyes or like shutting you out or whatever. It goes both ways. So usually if they're not feeling you, you're not feeling them, it's like a weird tension.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like weird, like just talk. Hey, Chuck, I feel like we're like on two highways, but separate highways, like going parallel with, let's like, can we find a way to communicate more effectively both ways?
Yeah, I had that conversation actually with an old boss, knowing that he was very analytical, very just to the point, and I'm an emotional person, and once again, bouncing around. And it was really hard for us to kind of mesh in a way where it was really difficult for me to have him essentially as a boss, because I was like, he doesn't get me and I don't really get him. And we weren't doing a very good job of trying to get each other and trying to communicate. Right. So like, I feel that if you know that there's that tension there and that you guys are on different kind of, planes, like at least have the maturity to have that awareness and then be like, all right, well, how are we going to fix this? Or how are we going to make it a little bit better so it's not so awkward? And that's a really hard conversation to have,
Yeah, it is. And you're right. And by the way, men, there again, because they're more goal focused and more, direct, generally, they'll respect you for bringing it up. If you say it, even if you can't come to a perfect agreement, they'll respect you because that's how they would do it. So you kind of have to like look at it. How would they respond? I look at it as it's kind of, I don't want to say fun because I don't want to minimize people that have like terrible working situations that they're under a ton of stress. But you also don't let people project something onto you and then you take that on. That's a woman thing where like now it's your problem and you got to fix it. Like if it's a team, then everybody needs to bring their ideas and resolution. Really quick, I'm looking at the time really quick.
And then Sue was like, next.
Well, I'm trying.
Whoa, because you're giving us such great insight. So I love this.
Thank you. I don't know, but thank you. But so number 3, oversharing / talking too much. Number 4, doing the work of others. I've seen this firsthand.
We like to take on everybody else's responsibilities.
Yes. Rather than like, especially as leaders, but even as like partners, if you're an individual contributor, like, I'll just do it, right? Like I'll take it all on myself. I have 38 hours in the day, but I'll do it. I'll figure it out. I already got 50 things going on in my life, but I'll take on more because women are like the heroes and we can shoulder a lot. But it's not fair and it's not right. You should be able to, don't do that. And it's the mother in us. It's the sisters in us. It's the maternal side of being a female, which is important because when you're rearing children, it's important to want to help and have that kind of mentality and heart that you want to help others. But in a workplace, you don't want to be looked at as the doormat or like, give it to Tobi. She'll take on another project because she says yes to everything, right? Which is exactly what happens. And that's a losing battle. That's a losing battle because you, and there again, this has been proven time and again too. There's really a lot of studies out there naturally because half the country's female and half the country's male around you can't keep up. So like women will take on a project and they'll come out of the gate guns a-blazing. And then it's like it hurts them in the end because they can't keep up that pace. So when people come to expect a certain thing, right? They saw you come out guns a-blazing and now 6 months later when you're like dead beat tired because you just can't keep it up or things start falling through the cracks. Well, now guess what? Now they all turn on you because you aren't keeping up that like miracle worker pace, which is kind of crazy. I wrote down a line that I hadn't seen before. I don't know where it came from, but I thought it was pretty funny. It said when a boss asks a man for a miracle in the workplace, he says, I either laugh, I negotiate, or I delegate it to a woman. That's what male answered. I'm like, oh, great.
Oh
But
my
that's so
gosh.
true, right? Women
That
might
is
be able to do
true.
it.
Oh my gosh.
And then number 5, there's a lot of things, like you said, but I think number 5 is probably maybe, to me, one of the biggest things that us ladies can sometimes do to self-sabotage, which is that we try to be perfect. That short of perfect is like the opposite of perfect is a failure. And it's just not the case.
Yeah.
And we put that on ourselves oftentimes. Like, no one asked for perfection, but we did, of ourselves. And then when we don't achieve that, at least me, like I said, I should have said this whole thing. Just, this is a conversation, a counseling session for Tobi Moyle right now. I can beat myself up over it because it's not perfect. And by the way, there are a lot of like specific strategies. Say this, not this. How to answer when someone says, why wasn't this done on time? Rather than apologize, say, well, here are the 3 reasons it was not done on time, and don't internalize that. There are actual great tools out there. Google tools, communication for women. There's great ways to like build some new conversations with yourself and new ways to say things and respond to things out there.
I love that. Oh my gosh, such like a huge wealth of knowledge. This is why you are a business coach.
Well, I don't know about all that, but I've been around a while, so we've seen a lot, right?
Yeah, no, this is fantastic, and I feel like you did a really good job of kind of pinpointing what, things that are, like I said, relevant and that we still experience, right? Like, I mean, yes, it's 2022, but these are real. Like every single thing that you mentioned, like I am someone that does those things, and doesn't minimize me as a person or as a woman. It's just kind of the reality of like, that's how a lot of us kind of function.
That's right. And I will offer this, Raquel, and if there's a woman out there, I mean, another big thing, I didn't put it on my little top 5, but women aren't great at negotiating for themselves. They'll negotiate for their clients or their customers, but women, I hear it with my clients all the time. Like, they'll offer a man a job and they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, the man came back and asked for more money. I rarely hear that when it comes to my female clients. They're just like, oh, I got the promotion, or I got the job. Did you ask for more? Oh no, I was just happy to get the promotion.
I've never asked for more.
Me either. I've never negotiated. And it's just who we are. We just aren't, doesn't mean we're bad, doesn't mean whatever, just who we are. So, but that literally hurts us because there is a wage gap. It still is, like you said, it still exists. And there's an onus certainly on the people that are behind that, but we also can take a little responsibility and start asking. So what I was going to offer is, if there's anyone out there that wanted to just bounce ideas, I'm not selling my coaching. I'm not trying to trick you into a conversation to talk about buying coaching. I'd be happy. It's my passion in life, quite literally, to help others. So if you wanted to have a one-off conversation and you wanted to spend 20 minutes one evening talking, reach out to me, and at least you have somebody else to bounce an idea off, or how you should approach a situation. I'd be happy to do that.
I'm calling you because I already have, there's already a situation that is going to be coming up soon, and I already am like kind of having anxiety about it.
Yep.
So I'm going to take
Good. We can talk it through. Good. Well, thank you for having me on.
Yes.
I respect and admire
she helped me clarify that she wasn't saying next bullet point. She was saying next because of the next conference. So I think she was, she maybe assumed that when you mentioned the women's conference, it was for next.
No. Yeah.
Sorry, Sue.
That's funny. There is that. That is something, but that's different. But I respect everything you are doing, and as a fellow female, I cheer you on every day from afar. Every time I see you online. So I love it.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll get to see you at NAMBA. My plan is to be there in Orlando in September, so I'm excited for that.
Great.
But thanks for being such a great sport. And this is very last minute, all of you. Like, I literally called her yesterday and said, "Can you be here today?" So I appreciate you, shuffling some things around to make this work, because I think this was fantastic. And anybody that was on, like Delilah, Suha, Michael, Christina, everyone, but also people always jump on the replay too. So
awesome.
So thank
All
you
right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Be well.
Thank you. And just stay on for a second, you know.